think we are good to go. All right, so, oh, I just realized I need my knife. Oh, of course it's locked. I'm gonna have to restart this. Okay, so today we are making the individual Rotini Parmesan recipe. So I have adapted this recipe from a full-size recipe that makes enough for about 4 to 5 people down to about enough that will make enough for one person. So what I'm just doing to start is waiting to get my water warm, which it's already getting there, which is nice. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a smaller pot because we're only cooking about 3/4 of a cup of pasta. Okay, so I have probably the second smallest size here. We only need to fill it up about maybe 2/3 full. And we're going to add some salt to it as well. Do we know why we salt the water? Any ideas? What would it do to the pasta? Yeah, it actually helps the water to boil more quickly. And the second reason is it also provides flavor to the pasta because the pasta is not very flavorful on its own. So anytime that we can add flavor to our pasta, we will want to do that. So we need to add about 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm just using a box of salt here. And I'm just going to estimate about 1 tablespoon. It seems like a lot, but when you think about the amount of water that is in this pot, okay, 1 tablespoon is not a lot. I learned when I was I should put my apron on, when I was cooking, that in kitchens that your water should taste like salt water. That's how salty it should be. I maybe don't add quite that much salt, but I make it salty enough. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, I have my pasta over here. So we're using rotini, which is kind of like a corkscrew looking type pasta. I really like it. We use this probably more than anything else at home because I find the sauce really gets into all those grooves and it really sticks to it nicely. Okay, once the water's boiling, we will add our 3/4 of a cup of pasta, but for now, I'm gonna get started on my sauce. So first I need 1/4 of an onion. Now this is a pretty small onion, so I might use a little bit more of that. But again, because we are just making enough for one person, we don't need a lot. So cutting off the top and the bottom, I just took the smaller half, and I'm going to peel off the excess here. Okay, getting all that skin off of there. And we want to finely chop it because we don't want to eat necessarily big chunks of onion because we're not going to puree it or anything. So I'm going to do the trick that we learned how to cut an onion finely chopped. So I'm going to chop it almost all the way through, but not quite, so that I have this kind of little, these little slices. Okay, and then you're going to go the other direction. Remember, using our claw, and we're going to make a very, very fine dice. Okay, just like that. So we've ended up with, I would say, maybe about 1/8 of a cup to 1/4 cup of onion total. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is to get our garlic. So I'm going to, just for time's sake, I'm going to make it really fast on myself and just peel it and use a garlic press. You guys can use one of these during our lab too if you want to speed up the process because we already have minced garlic so far this year. But if you would like to, you can also mince it with your knife. Okay, so I'm just going to get all that paper off because that doesn't press well. Okay, and then just take it, put it in here. I'm actually going to put both in because they're both pretty small. And just squeeze it right through, and then just take that little bit of garlic off, just like that. So we don't need a lot, again, because this is an individual recipe. Okay, and then I need 1 small tomato and some fresh parsley. So we're using these Roma tomatoes. I like these because they're a really nice size, and they have some good flavor. I find the big fat onions don't tend to have as good of a flavor. And all I'm going to do is cut out the little middle part of the tomato, because that's the only part that we don't want. So I just use a paring knife and just stick it in and cut around the tomato like that. And then we just have this little bit that comes out. Okay, and then we need to just coarsely chop this, because this will break down as we cook it. So I'm just cutting it into, you know, about centimeter slices. And then I'm going to cut it into lengthwise pieces. Okay, just like that. And then you're going to just coarsely chop it. If it gets a little squished, that's fine. Okay, because we do want it will break down and stuff into our sauce. Like so. And this is a really nice, easy way to make a sauce if you don't have any tomato sauce at home for your pasta. Okay, once I'm done that, I'm going to start heating up my pan so that it's ready to go. So I'm just going to start it on high, and then I'll turn it down. And I need my parsley and my Parmesan. Those are the only 2 things that I didn't have out yet. So parsley doesn't have a ton of flavor. It's more just used kind of for color. So I'm just going to take a little bunch off. I'll be divvying that out to you guys tomorrow, or later on. Sorry, not tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about that. And I'm just going to take, the easiest way to take the leaves off the parsley is just kind of pull down the stem. Just like that. You can eat the stem. It's totally fine. Has some flavor in it too. But for our purposes, we're just going to use the leaves. So you need about a tablespoon of this. Now this will be your first time cutting this in this course. So whenever you're cutting herbs, what you want to do is you just want to take them and bunch them into like a little package. Okay, get all those leaves kind of together so that they're kind of nice and tight. And then you can just give them a nice chop through, making sure your fingers don't get caught in there. Okay, so I like to kind of do it once, and then maybe I'll do a little cross chop a couple more times after that. But that's all you need. You don't need to pulverize it. Okay? And I also forgot to put a paper towel under my cutting board here, so make sure you guys do that so it doesn't slip around. Okay, so my pan is heating up, so I'm going to add some vegetable oil to it. I need about a tablespoon or so. This calls for 2. I'm going to start with 1 and see how it is. And I'm going to add the onion, garlic, and tomato into my pan. So I can just take my cutting board and use my knife to just put it all right in there. And I'm going to use a wooden spoon to mix it all together. So I started it on high. I'm going to turn it down a little bit right now because I don't want the garlic to burn. If you guys have ever eaten raw or garlic that's been burnt, it doesn't taste very good at all. Okay, and then as it's cooking, you'll notice that the tomatoes start to break up, which is exactly what we want. And you can even start to kind of push them down with your, kind of squish them with your spoon. And this is going to turn into a really lovely sauce. The other reason you don't want to cook it on high for too long, you want to kind of cook it at about a medium, is because if you cook it on too high, you're going to get rid of all those lovely juices and you're going to just burn your ingredients. Okay, we're trying to cook it a little bit lower and slower. Okay, I'm going to leave that to sit aside. The other thing that we're going to add to this sauce later is oregano and basil. So we need, how much of these? About half a teaspoon of each of these. So I'll get out my measuring spoons. And you need a half a teaspoon. So these add a really nice flavor in. So I'm just going to wait for a moment, let that cook a little bit longer. And then I'll add that in shortly. And then the last thing that we're going to do, once all of our herbs are in here, the sauce has been cooking for a little bit, okay? When the pasta is done cooking, we're actually going to reserve some of the pasta water and we're going to add it into our sauce, okay? So pasta water is a great little trick to use if you have a sauce that's not really that thick and you want to add, that is really thick and you want to add some liquid to it, but you don't want to just add water from the tap. Okay, adding the pasta water, what it does is it thickens it nicely as well as kind of adds more body to your sauce because of the starches in the water. Okay, turn this down a little bit. My water is now boiling for my pasta. So I need about 3/4 of a cup. So to measure out 3/4 of a cup, you can either do a 1/4 cup measure 3 times, or you can do a 1/2 cup plus a 1/4 cup. It's the same thing. Okay, so I'll just do this one. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, aside. So I'm going to turn this down to low because this seems to be cooking very quickly. And I'm going to add some of my parsley and my basil and oregano now. So you guys should have basil, or you should have basil in your kitchens, in your staples bins. And then the oregano we'll have to share at a central station. Okay. Give that a stir. Give my pasta a stir. Now what I would have liked to do is have my pasta cooking a little bit ahead of time so that it was almost done. But for our purposes, it'll be a little bit later. So for the rest of this demo, I'll get you guys started in the kitchens because we're running out of time, and I'll explain later. But just for the video purposes, what we're going to do, once the pasta is cooked, okay, we're going to use a liquid measuring cup and we're going to take out water from the pot first. Okay, we need about a cup. Okay, the more you take out, the better. And then you will drain the rest of your pasta using a colander in your sinks. Okay, and then you can add the pasta water to your sauce mixture to make it more of a liquidy sauce, and it also adds a little bit of creaminess because of the starch. Okay, and then the very last step is adding Parmesan. Okay, so I ended up bringing some from home because I wasn't sure we had enough for all of you guys to cook with. So I'll be using this later, and I'll show you guys when you guys actually get into the kitchens once my pasta is cooked. Okay, but for those on the video, okay, so once the pasta is done, take out pasta water, drain the rest, add the pasta back in the pot, a little bit of vegetable oil so it doesn't stick to itself. Add a little pasta water to your sauce to make it more of a liquidy sauce rather than a dry sauce. Add 1/8 cup of Parmesan, let it cook, then you add your pasta, plate it with a little Parmesan and parsley, and you're done. Okay? All right, let me stop the video and then we can get started.